I'll pay you $10 million. Just come with me to a wedding." Those words left her stunned, a homeless girl standing at a freezing bus stop. She had once slept in garbage bags, been fired from her job because she was poor, and survived on leftover bread. So why would a billionaire choose her to attend his ex-fiancée's wedding? What they didn't know was that this girl would leave the bride's entire family in stunned silence. And what awaited behind those chapel doors was something even he never saw coming. "You won't believe what really happened." Maya's laughter faded instantly as her eyes widened in shock. She had never touched that kind of money before. Here stood a confident, well-dressed man leaning against an expensive car, asking her to join him at a wedding and pretend to be his partner. It didn't make sense. Maya was a 26-year-old homeless woman who had seen the worst that life could throw at her. Just a few years ago, she had a home, a small, modest apartment on the outskirts of the city. That was before the government decided to build new roads and tear down everything in their path, including her home. They were promised compensation, promises of new homes and a better future, but it was all a lie. Months passed, and people like Maya, families, workers, and children, found themselves on the streets, living in tents and makeshift shelters. Yet no one came, no one cared. The promised compensation never arrived. The government's words turned to dust, and Maya was left to navigate the cold, harsh streets with nothing but the clothes on her back. When she lost her home, she also lost her job. The company she had worked for claimed they cared about their employees, but in reality, they cared more about their reputation than the well-being of the people who made their business thrive. They told Maya they could no longer keep her on, that her situation was bad for the company's image. She couldn't argue. She had nothing left to fight with. She had been forced into a cycle she couldn't escape. Job hunting became an exhausting routine. Every day, she walked from one interview to the next, only to be turned away. Maybe it was her appearance. She had to bathe in streams to avoid public restrooms, and after spending days on the streets without a proper bath, the scent that clung to her was impossible to ignore. Maybe it was her tired eyes or the way her clothes had worn thin, but whatever it was, she never seemed to get the chance she so desperately needed. And now, here was a man offering her a life-changing sum of money, asking her to pretend to be something she wasn't. "Why me?" she asked, her voice shaky yet curious. Adrian hesitated, his gaze dark and conflicted. "I need someone to attend a wedding with me. I'm supposed to bring someone, and I need it to look real." Maya frowned, her confusion only deepening. "What's in it for you?" Adrian hesitated again, almost debating whether to be completely honest. "It's complicated. The people at this wedding, they're from my past. I need them to think I'm happy, that I've moved on." A million questions rushed through Maya's mind. What kind of man would ask a stranger, someone who had nothing, to pretend to be his partner for a night? And why would she agree to it, especially when it felt so wrong? But then the thought of $10 million hit her, and Maya couldn't ignore the temptation. 10 million could change everything. It could take her off the streets for good, give her a future, a chance to rebuild. But there was a price to it. There was always a price. She thought about the cold nights, the hunger, the constant struggle. She thought about how much she wanted out of this life, how desperately she wanted a fresh start. "All right," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll go, but you'll need to explain a little more. I don't do things without understanding why." Adrian nodded, his face softening for the first time since the conversation began. "I understand. I'll explain everything later, but I need you to trust me." Maya hesitated as Adrian opened the passenger door of his sleek black luxury car. The glossy finish gleamed under the fading sunlight, and she could see her worn-out reflection in the tinted window. Her fingers brushed nervously against the seatbelt as she slid inside. The leather seat felt cool and smooth beneath her, so soft it felt like she was sitting on clouds. Adrian rounded the car and slid into the driver's seat with effortless grace. As the engine purred to life, Maya caught the faint scent of expensive cologne mixed with the new car smell that filled the cabin. The dashboard blinked with high-tech displays she didn't recognize. It felt like stepping into another world, a world she had no place in. The car pulled smoothly onto the road, leaving behind the broken streets Maya had come to know so well. She stared out the window, watching the scenery blur past, street vendors, crumbling sidewalks, people struggling to get by. All of it faded as Adrian drove them toward wealthier neighborhoods. Silence hung between them, broken only by the soft hum of the engine. Maya stole a glance at Adrian. His jaw was set, his hands gripping the steering wheel with quiet intensity. He looked calm on the surface, but she sensed there was a storm brewing beneath his cool exterior. "So, is this the part where you tell me what I've just agreed to?" Maya asked, her voice breaking the tension. Adrian's lips twitched slightly, almost like he wanted to smile, but the serious expression remained. "We'll talk when we get to my place." Maya frowned but didn't press him. She wasn't sure if it was curiosity or the promise of $10 million that kept her quiet, but either way, she stayed put as they drove further. The surroundings changed drastically. The buildings grew taller, sleeker. Maya spotted high-end boutiques, restaurants with gold-lettered signs, and people strolling casually with designer bags slung over their shoulders. She felt a pang of discomfort. She had spent so long on the outskirts of this world that seeing it up close felt like stepping into a dream or a nightmare, depending on how you looked at it. Finally, the car slowed as they approached a gated driveway. Maya's mouth fell open slightly as the gate slid open to reveal a sprawling estate. The house, or more accurately, the mansion, stood like a modern castle, all glass and steel with sharp, clean lines. The garden was meticulously landscaped, with hedges so perfectly trimmed they looked artificial. Maya had never seen anything like it. "Welcome to my home," Adrian said quietly as he pulled into the driveway and parked near the entrance. Maya swallowed hard as she stepped out of the car, her shoes scuffing against the pristine stone driveway. She felt out of place, like a stain on an otherwise spotless canvas. Her heart pounded as she took in her surroundings. Everything screamed luxury, from the massive double doors to the marble steps leading up to them. "This is where you live?" she asked, her voice laced with disbelief. Adrian gave her a sideways glance as he unlocked the front door. "It's home," he said simply, pushing the door open and gesturing for her to follow. Maya stepped inside, and her breath caught in her throat. The interior was just as grand as the exterior. Polished floors gleamed under the soft glow of chandelier lights, and the air smelled faintly of lavender and something expensive she couldn't quite place. The furniture looked like it belonged in a magazine, modern, sleek, and completely untouchable. She felt like an intruder. Adrian watched her carefully, as though trying to gauge her reaction. "You all right?" he asked. Maya blinked, snapping herself out of her trance. "Yeah," she said, though her voice was quieter than usual. "I've just never been anywhere like this." Adrian gave a small nod, as though he understood. He motioned toward a set of stairs that curved gracefully up to the second floor. "Come on, we'll talk upstairs." As Maya followed him, her eyes wandered again, taking in the artwork on the walls, the intricate details and the architecture. Everything felt surreal, like she had stepped into someone else's life, and in a way, she had. Once they reached the second floor, Adrian led Maya down a long hallway lined with tall windows and intricate light fixtures. He stopped in front of a door at the far end and pushed it open. Maya stepped inside, expecting something simple, but what she saw left her speechless. The room was massive. A king-sized bed sat in the center, covered in silken sheets and flanked by elegant nightstands. A crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting soft light across the polished wooden floors. A sleek vanity table, a plush sofa, and a flat-screen TV mounted on the wall completed the picture. It wasn't a guest room, it was a five-star suite. "Tomorrow's the wedding," he said, breaking the silence. "You'll need to look your best." Maya tore her gaze from the luxurious surroundings and frowned at him. "And why exactly do I need to look my best?" Adrian sighed and rubbed the back of his neck, as if reluctant to answer. "Because I want my ex to see what she lost." Maya blinked, then let out a sharp laugh. "Wait a minute. All of this is about your ex. She crossed her arms and gave him a look that was equal parts amused and incredulous. So you can't move on from your ex, and now you're dragging me into your little revenge fantasy? Adrian's jaw tightened. It's not like that, he said, his tone clipped. And it's not up for discussion. Before Maya could press him further, he stepped aside and gestured toward the in-soot bathroom. Wash up. My stylist will be here soon to give you a little polish. His eyes drifted briefly over her ragged clothes, messy hair, and dirt-streaked face, but he said nothing more before turning and leaving the room. Maya huffed in frustration as the door closed behind him. Unbelievable, she muttered under her breath. Still, she couldn't deny that the offer was tempting. A hot shower, clean clothes, and if Adrian was serious, a makeover that might make her look like someone else entirely. She wandered around the room, her fingers trailing over the marble-top vanity and the soft velvet cushions on the sofa. On the nightstand, there was a small crystal lamp that must have cost more than anything she'd ever owned. Everything in the room was expensive, shiny, and perfect, making her feel out of place. Shaking off the feeling, she headed into the bathroom and stopped dead in her tracks. The bathroom was as grand as the bedroom, with gleaming white tiles, a glass-walled shower, and a bathtub so deep it could probably fit 2 people. Plush towels were neatly folded on the counter, and there was a tray of fancy soaps and lotions that smelled like lavender and vanilla. Maya peeled off her dirty clothes and stepped into the shower. As the hot water poured over her, she felt days of grime and exhaustion melt away. She scrubbed her skin until it was pink and lathered her hair with shampoo that smelled like jasmine. For the first time in forever, she felt human. After what felt like an eternity, she finally stepped out, wrapped herself in a soft, oversized towel, and padded back into the room. She was still towel drying her hair when there was a knock at the door. "Come in," she called hesitantly. The door opened, and in walked a woman who looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. She was tall, with sleek black hair and a sharp-tailored outfit. A large black bag hung from her shoulder, and she moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. "Hello, Maya," the woman said with a warm but professional smile. "I'm Lena. Adrian called me to help you get ready." She set the bag down on the vanity and began unpacking an array of tools and products, curling irons, makeup palettes, nail polish, and more. Maya sat down at the vanity, feeling a little overwhelmed as Lena got to work. First, Lena tackled Maya's hair. She combed through the tangles with practiced ease, applied a smoothing serum, and began styling it with a curling iron. The messy strands transformed into soft, glossy waves that framed Maya's face beautifully. Next came Maya's nails. Lena filed and shaped them, then painted them with a delicate nude polish that made her hands look elegant and refined. "Now let's do something about your skin," Lena said gently, inspecting Maya's face. She applied a cooling face mask to calm Maya's irritated skin, then carefully covered any blemishes and redness with foundation and concealer. Slowly but surely, Maya's pimples and acne faded from view, replaced by smooth, glowing skin. Lena added soft touches of makeup, a hint of blush, a swipe of mascara, and a natural-looking lip color. By the time she finished, Maya barely recognized herself. When Lena finally stepped back, Maya stared at her reflection in stunned silence. Her messy hair, tired eyes, and uneven complexion were gone. In their place was a woman who looked polished, confident, and dare she think it, beautiful. "You clean up nicely," Lena said with a wink. Maya blinked, still trying to process what she was seeing. Was this really her? "Adrian is going to be impressed," Lena added as she packed up her tools. Maya's heart skipped a beat at the mention of his name. She didn't care what Adrian thought, did she? But as she stood up and smoothed down the silk robe Lena had left for her, she couldn't help but wonder what he would say when he saw her like this. Because for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she was more than just a girl from the streets. She felt unstoppable. Maya descended the grand staircase slowly, her bare feet barely making a sound on the polished wood. She felt strange in the silk robe, her newly styled hair brushing her shoulders as she approached the kitchen. The faint aroma of garlic and herbs greeted her. Adrian stood by the stove, stirring something in a pan. He glanced up when she entered and froze for a moment. His expression was unreadable, but then a slow, approving smile tugged at his lips. "You clean up well," he said, his voice low and warm. Maya shrugged, trying to ignore the way her heart fluttered at his gaze. "It's mostly the stylist's magic." They sat at the dining table, where Adrian had set out plates of pasta and salad. They ate quietly, the tension from earlier lingering, though it was softened now by an odd, unspoken understanding. When they finished, Adrian leaned back in his chair, his gaze lingering on her. "Good night, Maya." "Good night," she said, her voice softer than she intended as she headed upstairs. She could still feel his eyes on her, and for the first time, she wondered what tomorrow might bring. The night before the wedding, Adrian couldn't shake the feeling of dread that gnawed at him. The hours spent in his lavish home, surrounded by luxury and comfort, seemed to slip away in a blur of memories. He stared out of the large windows, watching the darkness of the city below, but his mind was far from the present. It was somewhere else, back in the past, with her, Serena. He had loved her with everything he had. She had been the center of his world, the one he thought he would build a future with. He had been a fool, really, so blind to her faults, so willing to overlook the cracks in their relationship. She was his first real love, beautiful, charming, and effortlessly captivating. Adrian had always thought he could be the one to fix her, to show her how much he cared and build a perfect life together. But Serena wasn't the woman he thought she was. Adrian's mind drifted to the nights they spent together, the way she would smile sweetly and tell him everything he wanted to hear. She seemed to be his perfect match, but as their relationship grew, cracks began to show, small things at first, little inconsistencies he shrugged off. She would criticize his ambitions, belittle his dreams, the things that mattered to him, the things he poured his heart into. His work, his vision were nothing but jokes to her. "You'll never make it, Adrian. You're not cut out for the big leagues," she said once, her tone dripping with disdain. "Just stick to your little ideas. They're not worth anything." Her words haunted him. At the time, he didn't understand how toxic it all was. He believed she was right because he had no success to prove her wrong. But eventually, her cruelty escalated. She started openly disregarding him, flaunting her independence while he continued to give her everything. The pain of constantly being overlooked, belittled, and dismissed began to erode him. But he never saw it for what it was, not until the day he walked in on her with someone else. The image of that moment was burned into his mind. He had come home early from a business trip, eager to surprise her. The house was quiet, too quiet, and then, as he pushed open the bedroom door, he saw it, Serena in the arms of another man. She didn't even try to hide it. There was no guilt in her eyes. She didn't even stop to acknowledge him. It shattered him. He had given everything to her, believed in her when no one else did, and she had betrayed him in the most brutal way possible. But what hurt the most wasn't the infidelity itself. It was the cold indifference she showed, no apologies, no remorse, just a look that said she was done with him. It was in that moment of raw betrayal that the Adrian he had been shattered. The love he felt, the trust he placed in her, all of it crumbled in an instant. In the weeks that followed, Adrian spiraled. But in that spiraling, something changed inside him. The pain, the rejection, it became fuel. Instead of falling apart, he buried himself in his work. Every insult, every cold word from Serena became a reminder that he couldn't afford to fail. He couldn't afford to let her be right. He built his empire brick by brick, driven by a need to prove to the world, and to himself, that he was more than she had ever given him credit for. Years passed, and success followed. Adrian became the billionaire he had always dreamed of being, but it didn't come without a cost. His ambition consumed him, leaving little room for anything else, especially love. No one could compare to Serena, and though he had built a life others would envy, he never truly moved on. The pain of losing her lingered, and now, as he stood on the precipice of attending her wedding, Adrian realized that a part of him still wanted her back. Maybe it was the unfinished business between them. Maybe it was because, despite everything, he hadn't been able to shake the memory of her. But this wedding, it wasn't just about showing Serena what she had lost. It was about showing himself that he was more than the man who had once been broken by her. When he had asked Maya to come with him, something shifted in Adrian. Maybe it was the way Maya had looked at him earlier, her raw honesty and quiet strength. She didn't ask for anything from him. She wasn't part of his world. And maybe that was the kind of escape he needed. He could lose himself in her for just a moment, pretend to be the man he'd always wanted to be. But deep down, he knew he couldn't escape the ghosts of his past, the ones that haunted him whenever he thought of Serena. As he sat in his luxury car, staring out at the city lights, Adrian couldn't help but wonder if this whole charade of bringing Maya to the wedding, pretending for the night, was a way to bury the feelings he still had for Serena. Maybe, just maybe, he was trying to convince himself that he was better off without her. But as he prepared for the night ahead, the truth lingered in his chest, heavy and undeniable. He was still hurt, and he wasn't sure if he would ever be truly free of her. The morning of the wedding arrived with the soft light of dawn spilling through the elegant curtains of Adrian's mansion. Maya, who had never slept in such luxury, lay curled up on the soft mattress, completely unaware of the early hour. The bed was like nothing she had ever experienced, firm but cushioned just enough to make her feel weightless. The cool air from the air conditioning wrapped around her like a blanket, and for the first time in a long while, Maya felt like she was in a place where she truly belonged. She had never slept so deeply in months, the peacefulness of the room lulling her into a deep slumber. Her messy hair, still damp from the shower the night before, was tangled in every direction, but it didn't matter. The world outside could wait. Maya wasn't used to feeling like this, safe and comfortable. She had forgotten how it felt to just sleep. The door creaked open softly as the stylist, Lena, stepped in. She was impeccably dressed, her sharp black suit making her look like a professional ready for business. She looked at Maya with a quiet smile, but there was no time for pleasantries. The wedding was fast approaching, and Maya was still asleep, completely oblivious to the timeline. Lena stood there for a moment, debating whether to let Maya sleep just a little longer, but when she saw the time, she sighed and moved toward the bed. "Time to wake up, Maya," she said gently, nudging the blanket aside. "We have a lot to do today." Maya groaned softly, the comfort of the bed tugging at her. She squinted against the morning light and buried her face into the pillow, her voice muffled. "Just a few more minutes," she muttered, her exhaustion evident. Unbothered by the resistance, Lena took a step back and pulled out her phone. She dialed Adrian's number, holding the phone up to her ear. "Adrian, she's still asleep. I think I'm going to need your help." Seconds later, Adrian's voice came through, calm and collected, but with an underlying urgency. "I'll be there in a minute." A few moments later, the door swung open, and Adrian walked in, his presence commanding the room. When his eyes landed on Maya, his heart skipped a beat. There she was, lying there, completely unaware of the effect she was having on him. Her hair was still tangled and wild, a complete contrast to the polished, sophisticated woman he had seen the night before. For a moment, Maya looked like an innocent child, so completely vulnerable and unguarded in her sleep. A smile tugged at the corner of Adrian's lips before he caught himself. "Wake up, sleepyhead," he said, his voice a mix of authority and amusement. "We have business to attend to, and don't you dare disappoint me." His words were firm, but there was an edge of humor that softened his tone. Maya groggily lifted her head, squinting at him, still not fully awake. The warmth of the bed and the comfort of the room were enough to make her want to ignore him and slip back into her dream world. But the sound of his voice snapped her into reality. "Fine, fine," she muttered, pushing herself up. The softness of the blankets was reluctant to let her go as she quickly rushed to the bathroom to take her bath, the cold air biting at her skin as she transitioned from the warmth of the bed to the cool tiles of the bathroom. Meanwhile, Lena set to work laying out all the tools she would need for the makeover. When Maya emerged, freshly bathed, she felt like a new person. Lena immediately got to work on her, carefully styling her hair, applying makeup, and making her look as polished and refined as possible. The pink designer dress that Adrian had handpicked for her hung on the back of the door, and once she slipped it on, she felt a transformation, not just on the outside, but something inside her, too. The woman looking back at her in the mirror was unrecognizable from the one who had been living on the streets just days ago. As they walked out the door, Adrian glanced at her once more, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer than usual. She looked different, beautiful. He couldn't help but smile. They drove to the wedding venue in silence, but inside the car, everything had changed. As they arrived, the grandeur of the building made Maya's heart pound. Yet Adrian gently took her hand, steadying her, grounding her. When they entered the wedding hall, time seemed to slow. Every head turned. Every whisper echoed like a wave. But Maya didn't shrink back. She stood taller, her fingers wrapped in Adrian's, her presence undeniable. The same girl who once wandered forgotten streets now walked into a room full of people who never saw her coming. And as she stood there, shoulder to shoulder with the man who once thought he had nothing left to feel, Maya realized she wasn't just part of someone else's story anymore. She was rewriting her own. Sometimes, the world breaks us before it ever embraces us. But every broken piece can become the foundation of something unshakable. So, if you were the one holding that opportunity in your hands, what would you do? Leave a dot in the comments if this story made you see things differently. Hit the like button if you believe everyone deserves a new chapter. And don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes, all it takes is the right story at the right time to give someone the chance to begin again.